me. Taking talk in my arms is the soul of me. You walk by, as you see me lay face.
What up? It's your boy T-Bear here reaction. Oh, excuse me. I'm pushing it right in. Anyway, tomorrow is Backlash, or probably today if you watch the videos Backlash. Either way, we're checking out WWE Backlash, and one of the big matchups of Backlash is Jey Uso fighting for Damian Priest for the World Heavyweight Championship as well too. So with that being said, I decided I want to do this react to this video from Wrestling Zone. We'll talk about how Jey Uso is one of WWE's biggest babyfaces as well too, along with the likes of Cody Rhodes, as well as Sami Zayn as well too, Kevin Owens and Orton. So anyway, without further ado, let's check out this video how and why Jey is the biggest babyface in WWE. Let's get it.
Main event, Jey Uso is one of the hottest things in pro wrestling today. And he's put up some banger matches over the past year. Ever since he left the Bloodline, Jey is easily one of the best wrestlers today and one of the most over superstars on the main roster. And he's super over with the fans, especially because of his yeet movement. It's no secret that Jey is having the best run of his career, but trust me when I tell you, he's only getting started. So with that said, let's look at Jey Uso's rise to see how he turned into a main event level superstar after one of the most successful tag team runs of all time. Over the years, we've seen a lot of tag teams that eventually went their separate ways and paved the way for the rise of one of the superstars involved. Shawn Michaels is one of the best performers of all time, but most of you probably never heard of Marty Jannetty, who alongside HBK was the other half of the Rockers. Even tag teams composed of siblings saw one brother become way more successful than the other. Booker T is a great example. His career was way better than Stevie Ray's. The Steiners? Scott Steiner was way more popular. Same thing can be said about Jeff Hardy compared to his brother Matt. But even though that may be true, one of the most consistent tag teams we've seen in recent history is the Usos. The real-life twins Jimmy and Jey are sons of the legendary Rikishi. Of course, the tag team effortlessly worked out because they were built the same way, had the same faces, and they were both super athletic. It seemed like this tag team would never disband. From their main roster debut in 2010 until 2023, the twins were inseparable. They won 8 tag team titles and unified the Raw and SmackDown tag team belts to form the undisputed tag team titles. Jimmy and Jey went on to reign as champions for a record-setting 622 days. They had the longest tag team title reign ever, and they were set to become the greatest tag team of all time. But while they were busy making that case, the Usos had a much bigger storyline involving their family and the Bloodline. Of course, it all dates back to 2020, when Jey had to go through a singles run that elevated his status 10 times over. At WrestleMania 36, the Usos wrestled for the SmackDown Tag Team titles but lost. Jimmy Uso hurt his knee and he was out for 6 months. Meanwhile, Jey was healthy. At that point, the twins were inseparable, and they always stuck together. Neither one of them had a legit singles run until that point, but because Jey was healthy, obviously he had to wrestle during the Thunderdome era. Alright guys, let's be honest. These guys had been on TV for years, but apart from Michael Cole, no one knew who Jimmy was and who Jey was, because 1, they're twins and looked the same, and 2, they also had similar personalities. Of course, there were a few differences between them, with Jey being the more serious of the two, and Jimmy being the wacky one. But they never developed individual personalities that stood out. It was hard for Jey to become a singles wrestler without his brother. But fortunately for him, it just so happened that another family member stepped up to give his cousin Jey the push he needed.
Oh my God, what the hell? Who the hell? You know who the hell that is? God, it's Roman Reigns!
After a few months of absence, Roman Reigns returned to the company. He aligned himself with Paul Heyman and won the Universal title in a 3-way against Braun Strowman and The Fiend. Roman had a new character. From the company's babyface that WWE tried to shove down our throats, Roman became the ultimate villain and demanded that everyone had to acknowledge him. And hey, it makes sense from a storytelling perspective, because he knew that the audience didn't acknowledge him as the face of the company until then. The Scott Mode version of Roman Reigns wanted everyone to accept him, not only as their new champion, but as the head of the table. And this was a game changer. Shortly after winning the belt, his first title defense was against none other than his cousin Jey Uso. Jey won a fatal 4-way against Riddle, Corbin, and Sheamus, becoming the #1 contender for Roman's Universal title at the 2020 edition of Clash of Champions. A lot of people were surprised they were pushing Jey Uso into the main event scene. Until then, he'd never won a singles title, and he was only looked at as one half of the Usos. There were many other guys on the main event level, and it made more sense to put him in that position instead of Jey. But they pushed him into the main event match with Roman to improve his standing as a singles competitor, and that was also the start of a much bigger story that is still unfolding today. Thank God for long-term booking. Jey was the good guy who wanted to snap his cousin out of his new bad guy role.
Right.
For him, that wasn't the same cousin he grew up with. Roman became a man that was possessed with power, and he was now shoving himself down everyone's throats, forcing them to acknowledge him. And Jey was no exception. The match was a one-sided beatdown by Roman, who dominated Jey. It made sense for Roman to dominate his cousin, because at that point Jey had yet to develop the traction he needed to prove that he was a legit singles wrestler. That wasn't much of a real title match, but more so about advancing the NY family storyline. As Roman was beating down Jey, he demanded to be acknowledged as the tribal chief and the head of their family. The entire bloodline story can be traced back to that one moment. Jey was able to fight back, but a low blow from Roman was a game changer. Roman wasn't trying to win the match, he was forcing his cousin to acknowledge him, while proceeding to beat him down. The injured Jey Uso arrived to save his brother, but when Jey refused to acknowledge him, Roman Reigns continued the punishment. Finally, when Jey could no longer continue, Jey Uso threw in the towel. Roman Reigns won by technical knockout, and even though he was reluctant to do so, Jey Uso acknowledged him as the tribal chief.
You the tribal chief. That's what you want? You got it, man. Just leave him alone.
The events at Clash of Champions paved the way for a rematch at Hell in a Cell, where Roman would defend his title against Jey Uso in an I Quit match inside the Devil's Playground. Jey was getting traction as a defined character who wasn't going to back down from his cousin, and he just wanted Roman to be a good guy once again. But Roman's glorious reign was only getting started, and Jey was once again a plot device to advance Roman's greatness. In a brutal match, Roman speared Jey multiple times to force him to quit. Now Jey got in some offense, which allowed him to use a leather strap to gain the advantage, but Roman pulled the plug on the comeback and started beating down an unconscious Jey. The referee wanted to put an end to it, but Roman took him out because he wanted his cousin to say the words "I quit."
Right.
The defiant Jey didn't want to quit, forcing Jimmy to intervene again. Roman instead placed Jimmy in a guillotine, forcing Jey to say "I quit," ending the match to save his brother. After Roman won, the Wild Samoans appeared on the ramp to declare Roman as the new tribal chief, as the Usos looked on from the ring. This was the start of a new era for Jey's career, and he now had to acknowledge Roman as his tribal chief. Before he became main event Jey Uso, he was Roman's right-hand man. After Hell in a Cell, Jey aligned himself with Roman, turning heel in the process. Jey's new role was simple. Jey was Roman's right-hand man and his glorified bodyguard, helping him retain the title by interfering with his matches whenever his opponents were about to win. But Jey was initially conflicted about his role until he embraced it. WWE eventually boosted his singles reputation, and he won the Unrated Giant Memorial Battle Royal in 2021. Then at WrestleMania 37, he helped Roman retain the title, in a three-way against Edge and Daniel Bryan. After more than a year of absence due to his injury, Jimmy finally returned to action in May 2021. His return sparked friction within the bloodline, because Jey had been Roman's right-hand man for months. Meanwhile, Jimmy wanted to keep his brother away from Roman, especially after the events that transpired between them months ago.
Right.
Eventually, however, Jimmy was forced to acknowledge Roman as his tribal chief. On July 9, 2021, the Bloodline made their official debut as a faction. 9 days later, Jimmy and Jey reunited as a tag team and defeated the Mysterios to win the SmackDown Tag Team titles in their 8th and final run as a tag team. But this one lasted 622 days. The Usos dominated the tag team division for nearly 2 years. The Usos' reunion and return to dominance as Bloodline members halted Jey's momentum as a singles competitor. WWE paused Jey's singles push for a much bigger storyline involving him, his brother, and cousin, because working with the Bloodline allowed him to gain more recognition for his work. Eventually, Jimmy and Jey's younger brother Solo Sikoa joined the Bloodline as well, forming a powerful faction with one purpose: to become the most dominant faction WWE has ever seen. The Usos' reign was glorious, and they defeated every team who challenged them during those 622 days. No one was good enough to beat them. Shortly after Roman defeated Brock at WrestleMania 38 to unify the WWE and Universal titles, the newly crowned Undisputed Champion ordered his cousins to unify the tag team titles. In turn, Jimmy and Jey defeated Randy Orton and Riddle to win the Raw tag team titles, becoming the Undisputed Tag Team Champions. Jimmy and Jey didn't have anyone to feud with throughout their reign because no one was on their level. But when Sami Zayn forced himself into the Bloodline, things got interesting. While Roman and Jimmy were much more receptive to Sami's actions, as a self-proclaimed member of the Bloodline, Jey was much more cautious and hesitant. Sami told the entire world he was an honorary use. Jey didn't want anything to do with him. He was the only one who wasn't willing to allow Sami to join the Bloodline, until Sami proved himself when he helped him defeat Kevin Owens' team during the 2022 edition of War Games. Jey started to accept Sami, eventually treating him like his own brother. He recognized Sami's loyalty to the Bloodline and his willingness to help the faction succeed. But Kevin Owens did not give up, and Roman Reigns finally admitted they had a Kevin Owens problem.
Yeah.
Roman defeated Kevin Owens at the 2023 Royal Rumble, but after defeating him, Roman demanded that Sami hit him with a steel chair.
Stop.
Sami was conflicted, and he didn't want to attack his longtime friend. Instead, he attacked Roman, ending his run with the Bloodline. Roman, Jimmy, and Solo beat Sami down, while Jey looked on in disgust because he had already bonded with Sami and didn't want to beat down a man he looked at as a brother. and internal cracks within the faction started to appear. A few weeks later, Jey returned to SmackDown to help his brother defend the titles against Strowman and Ricochet, because he didn't want to leave his brother hanging, but that didn't prove he was back in the bloodline. After Roman beat Sami at Elimination Chamber, Jey even prevented the Tribal Chief from beating Sami down with a steel chair. But on the following Raw, Jey reaffirmed his commitment to his family when he struck Sami Zayn with a super kick, allowing Jimmy and Solo to attack him. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, who were hell-bent on destroying the Bloodline, reunited and challenged the Usos for the Undisputed Tag Team titles on WrestleMania 39. In a brutal match, Sami and KO beat the Usos. The ending was symbolic, as Sami hit Jey with 3 consecutive Helluva Kicks, ending the Usos' historic reign of 622 days as Tag Team Champions.
The Bloodline!
Yes.
This was the best match of Jey's career. Following the Usos' loss to Sami and KO, Roman didn't trust the Usos as much, and he started to depend more on Solo Sikoa. At the 2023 edition of Night of Champions, Roman and Solo Sikoa fought Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, but they lost when Jimmy betrayed the Bloodline by superkicking Roman for mistreating him and his brother. It made sense for Jimmy to betray the Bloodline first, because he never wanted to join in the first place. On the June 16 episode of SmackDown, Jey decided to leave the Bloodline, a surprising turn of events that no one saw coming.
Hey, y'all. I'm out too.
Events paved the way for the Bloodline Civil War at Money in the Bank 2023. In a massive match that allowed the Usos to survive a spear and Samoan spike combo, Jimmy and Jey were relentless and kicked out of a stack pin by Roman.
Yeah, look.
When Roman turned the tables to hit him with a spear, Jey kicked out with a low blow that the referee didn't catch. This was reminiscent of the low blow that Roman used in 2020 in his match against Jey. The low blow allowed the Usos to defeat Roman and Solo, with Jey pinning Roman.
Yes, Jey did it.
First and last person to pin him since December of 2019. The momentum of the win over Roman and Solo was more than enough for Jey to relaunch his singles run.
Runs into the chair by Jey, who's now unloading on the Tribal Chief.
He earned the right to challenge Roman for the Undisputed title and Tribal Combat at SummerSlam, after he decided to not only try to take the title away from Roman, but his Tribal Chief status too. Jey fought hard and overcame the odds when he removed Solo from the equation. During the final moments of the match, he focused on the champion and hit him with Roman's patent spear. Jey climbed the ropes and hit Roman with a massive Uso splash. Just when he was about to become the champion and the new Tribal Chief, Jimmy pulled his brother away and super kicked him.
From day one, you and your brother, and you do him like this?
He then fed Jey to a surprise Roman Reigns, who capitalized with a spear through the table, ending the match. In the next edition of SmackDown, Jimmy made it clear that he only attacked Jey because he didn't want his brother to turn like Roman. Once Jey became champion and Tribal Chief, he thought the power would corrupt Jey the same way it did Roman. The defiant Jey, however, super kicked all of the members of the Bloodline before quitting the faction and SmackDown for good. But at Payback 2023, Cody Rhodes announced that he had helped Jey Uso move from SmackDown to Raw. Switching brands allowed Jey to distance himself from the Bloodline, and even though they were reluctant, they accepted Jimmy into the fold after the betrayal. Clearly, the long-term plan was for Jimmy and Jey to feud, but the company were waiting for WrestleMania 40, and it was too early to start building up the match. Allowing Jey to move to Raw was also the best long-term decision to build his singles reputation. He may have been successful back in 2020 as a singles competitor, but they wanted to capitalize on his rising popularity, starting a Yeet movement that became his new identity.
Let me hear you say, yeet!
Yeah.
As a babyface, he looked like he could stand on his own without his family in the picture, but he found a new ally in Cody Rhodes, and he became the target of Raw superstars who hated the Bloodline. Jey made up with Sami and KO but couldn't bury the hatchet with Drew, who still blamed him for his loss to Roman back in 2022. Meanwhile, Judgment Day tried to pull Jey into their group and told him he needed a new family. But when Jey declined the offer, he became the Judgment Day's newest target, among other people of the Raw roster. He and Cody became a tag team and took the titles away from Judgment Day. It didn't last very long though, and the Judgment Day regained the titles. This set up a feud between Drew McIntyre and Judgment Day against a team of Jey Uso, Cody Rhodes, Sami Zayn, Seth Rollins, and Randy Orton at War Games. Jey's team won, and he was now 2-0 in War Games matches. Jey was now finding success as a singles competitor without his brother, but still, he was more of a team player, especially during his short run as tag team champions with Cody Rhodes. He had to establish himself as a more legitimate singles competitor, and this happened when he challenged Rollins to a one-on-one match for the world title. Even though he lost fair and square, he was now a true main eventer. Main event Jey Uso earned his first singles win after defeating Ludwig Kaiser on Raw near the end of 2023. He took his momentum to the 2024 Royal Rumble, where he and Jimmy were the first to enter the match.
That was wild.
It was the first time they'd come face to face since Jey kicked his brother before leaving SmackDown. The Rumble meeting started a feud between them. Then Jey challenged Gunther for the IC title, and he was about to win after landing a splash on Gunther. Destruction.
Fucking Pat McAfee, man. I said, is that this son of a bitch? Yo.
Allowed Gunther to beat Jey, who was more focused on taking out his brother. So you might be wondering, why did Jimmy do it? Well, Jimmy didn't want Jey to be successful without him. They've always been a team, and they won titles together. For years, you couldn't even tell who was who. But ever since leaving the bloodline, main event Jey Uso made a name for himself as a singles wrestler, creating memorable moments without his brother. Meanwhile, Jimmy is stuck with the bloodline, and he's the lowest ranking member. He became Roman's lapdog again, and he didn't want Jey to be successful without him, especially when he's just doing dirty work for Roman. It was always a long-term plan to have the brothers fight at WrestleMania, and it made sense for Jey to move to Raw, because he could become a singles wrestler without having to feud with his brother after Jimmy betrayed him. With that being said, Jey knew he had to take the monkey off his back, and that's why he challenged his brother Jimmy to a match at WrestleMania, because he was tired of his brother taking opportunities away from him. On SmackDown, Jimmy accepted, paving the way for their match at WrestleMania 40. Everyone foresaw Jey Uso's rise in 2020 when Jimmy was injured, but no one expected a Yeet movement, and Jey really improved on the mic. Hindsight 2020, Jimmy's injury was the best thing for Jey. Of course, the Bloodline story only helped to improve his standing with the company, and he became this massive babyface that everyone loves. What's next for Jey? Maybe he won't main event a pay-per-view anytime soon, but I'm sure a singles title run is in the books, as soon as he can get Jimmy and the Bloodline off his back. But before his singles rise, Jimmy and Jey became the longest reigning tag team champions of all time. Check out this video to find out how they did it.
Okay, so yeah, there you have it though, and I agree, man. He came a long way, man, as well too. That he's doing a good job. Can't wait to see his match against Damian Priest for the World Heavyweight Championship though. Who knows? He might surprise us. Other than that, if you like my reaction, like, share, subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's your boy T-Bear signing off. One love.